Welcome back. I'm the Watch King. In this video, we are going to talk about 14 karat gold Rolex. Is it a real thing? What's the deal with gold Rolex? Well, let's hop straight into it. So first things first, I do apologize. New mics on order, so that's coming out soon. The second thing is this video was inspired by somebody who got, right? This is a gentleman who buys a lot of vintage pieces from me, and he was looking for a 9 karat Rolex. This watchmaker said it was 9 karat. He actually serviced the watch, so I really don't trust this guy. I would never bring a watch to him, but he told my client that it was 9 karat. Now, the watch was from, I think, the 60s, right? Rolex did make 9 karat. There are 9 karat examples of Rolex that exist, but they're extremely rare in the early 1910s, and you just won't find that stuff in the 60s. So this is the inspiration of this video, so nobody gets taken, right, advantage of. Jumping into it. So in the 30s, 1936, 1938, Rolex made it a prerogative to break into the U.S. market. They were having problems in the 30s, right? There was no models that we know now. So the 1930s, they started making 14 karat alloy, right? In the States, 10 karat and 14 karat was pretty standard. In Britain, 9 karat and 18 karat is standard. So we already discussed 9 karat. 18 karat is what Rolex was making at the time in the 30s. Then they come out with this 14 karat for the Americans because it's cheaper. It's more of a price point watch because that's what at the time, that's what all the Americans were used to, from the 10 karat Hamiltons and so forth, and 14 karat. So it actually is successful after a few years. 1930s, 1940s, comes out with the Datejust, right? The 1945, the Rolex Datejust came out. It was made in 18 karat for the for the European market, and they also made it 14 karat for the US. Now, it wasn't exclusively made for 14 karat in the United States. There were some models, of course, 18 karat too sold in the States, but a lot of Americans wanted 14. That's why we see so many. They primarily made it 14K. So the Datejust is one of the models that came out in the 1945. The other models that were also solid gold were the Date, right? The Date is a smaller version of the Datejust. Pretty much the same quality. It's really, really nice. 34 millimeters. So they made that. They made the Oyster Perpetual in 14 karat. And they made finally the Daytona. We'll get to the Daytona in a second. So they only made 4 models. A lot of different references, right, from the 1930s all the way up to, of course, the late 70s and 80s. So, yeah, a lot of ground to cover in this one little video. But the Datejust came out. The Date, right, it has the date and the day. That never was made in 14 karat. There's a lot of misinformation and fake watches out there. They never made it. They never made bracelets in 14 karat. That was always a solid gold 18, right? So that's just one thing to note. Only the models that I mentioned, the Date, the Oyster Perpetual, the Datejust, and the Daytona. Those 4 models, that's it. So going on, new models come out, and continuing, Day comes out, and then eventually the Daytonas come out, right? The pre-Daytonas first, and the Daytonas themselves, they weren't selling well. They tried to make it, market it towards Americans, hence Daytona, right? It's a race in America, 14 karat. Now the 14 karat Daytonas are like a lot rarer. I think like 3 to 5 times rarer than the 18, but the 18 trade for more, which doesn't make sense. But a lot of things don't make sense in vintage Rolex. That's just another thing to add on there. So at the conclusion of everything, it was made through 1988 is when they stopped the Daytona, but I think the 14 karat stopped before that, and many of the other models. The Date, I think it was 88 also. I think they stopped really everything in the late 80s, and the mid 80s, they really started phasing out all these 14 karat because Rolex was trying to become more of a luxury brand, right? The tool watch wasn't necessary past the quartz crisis. So that's the whole story there on that end. Is it okay to buy 14 karat? How do I tell the difference between 14 karat and capped, right? Capped, there's not a lot of information out there to detect between the two. So all Rolex is one thing, they're stamped extremely well, right? Even if they're beat up, you can tell that a Rolex is gold. They will stamp it on the lugs heavily, on one lug, and they stamp pretty deep. The top lug, there will be one of them, and then the bottom two typically have it. Now, I don't know if it's the same at all, but there will be stamping of 14 karat, and they do it pretty deep, so you can tell that it is. There will be hallmarks all over. Now, if the lugs is extremely beat up, you can open up the case back, and in the case, now the case back is tricky because somebody can replace the case back of your Rolex, and it could be a solid gold case back, and the other stuff can be capped. I mean, it is more of a Franken thing and it's harder to do, but they can do it, right? So you got to be careful. You got to look at everything, right? The lugs is the biggest thing to tell. You can X-ray also. I mean, you have to have equipment, professional equipment, to do stuff like that, to test like the lugs or even the case, right? But then you don't want to magnetize the watch. That's a whole other thing too. So it's back and forth. But anyway, we're getting super complicated. They'll be stamping everywhere on every part. Rolex is extremely good at that for the 14. The capped will have no stamping on any of the lugs. On the inside of the case back, they're all pretty much, all the case backs on capped, I've noticed, are steel. So that's a really good indicator. If you have a steel color, by the way, because all the watch is steel, it's just capped. But the steel color, that's a great indicator. The later ones, right, the one I have in shop, the capped one, has it on the inside of the lugs, but the later ones, it kind of cuts off. It's only capped on top. That's like in the late 60s and 70s. The 50s, they put heavy layers of gold. They also did back then, they just didn't do it on the lugs on the back side of the case, right? So those are things to look out for. 18 karat, the same thing, right? They stamp 18 karat all over. You will know. It just is. I mean, unless it's really rubbed away, of course you can take the case back off or test it. You can scratch the case, right? That is often used. Now, I'm not a proponent of scratching stuff, but if it's that beat up and you can't even read the stamping, then of course it's fine. So all that being said, yes, it's fine to buy 14. You pay less for it, and then when you sell it, you get less for than an 18 karat, but that's just normal. That's how anything. It's like buying a brand new car and getting the base model versus all the upgrades, right? And it's not even an upgrade. In my opinion, 14K, I've talked to many jewelry designers and people that work in jewelry. 14 karat jewelry, 14 karat gold is a lot stronger than 18, right? It will last longer also. So there are benefits of having less pure gold too. It's not just, the 18 karat. The 18 karat has a different shine, of course, than 14 karat. That's just standard. There's more copper and silver in 14 karat, but that has its own unique charms too. It looks more rose gold. So over time. So it's just interesting. Buy 14 karat. It's a good way to get into solid gold watches. Just make sure you know what you're buying. Compare it to the 18 karat. Make sure you're getting a discount, etc., etc., etc. But we're seeing a trend right now into the gold Rolexes, right? We're seeing a trend that gold Rolexes are coming up while steel is going down. In the whole generally, gold watches are now on a trendward upwards, and the more like vintage style, more vintage actual sizing, like the 34s, Oyster Perpetuals and Dates, that stuff in Datejust, that's the really cool stuff you can buy, right? And I think it's coming very much into fashion. I see a lot of people asking about it. So hope that helps. I try to get as much information out there as possible for you guys. to note about buying it, and just buy it from a trusted guy. If you're not buying watches constantly and looking at watches like myself daily, right? I'm not trying to flex on you. I just, part of my job, I detect stuff. I detect, for instance, I bought a watch recently and the case back had a different reference number than the watch. But I know during that period, during the 1970s, that they had a different case back, right? It was a different stamped, but it's part of the watch. It's 100% correct. That's just what they did back in that time period. Now, if it was later, then it's a different story, right? So it's just pretty interesting. You see that, like, for instance, here's a great example of that. I don't want to keep you here too long, but 1601, for instance, the case back will often say 1600, and that's what comes from, or a 1603 will have a 16 case back. It's just how it is, right? That's the way it is. So stuff like that, some people get confused on and so forth, and I just explain everything. So it's good to find a dealer like, don't just buy it from me. There's great dealers out there if you're looking for something that I don't have or whatever. But make sure you have a guy who knows his stuff. So thank you all, and I will catch you in the next one. Have a great day.